Hello from Gardening at Dwensa here in Ireland, and for this garden tour, by way of contrast, I thought I'd bring you into a different corner of the garden, one that I haven't shown in a while. Now, this isn't a section that's geared up for early spring and late spring interest. It's kind of a summer section of the garden, but there's plenty that's looking really good in there at the moment, and I thought I would bring you in with me for a stroll and we can just chat about what I've done there lately and what's looking good and all that. So do come with me and let's have a look at this other corner of the garden. Okay, so this is the section of garden that we're going to venture into this morning. I hope you'll come with me and we'll have a little kind of stroll around and I can show you what's looking good. And we'll start off with a little sweep up the right hand arm of that grassy walkway where, well, the beds start, the flower beds start. And you can see that I have Bergenia here, lots and lots of Bergenia. And if you listen very closely, you can hear the bees humming because they really do love it. And Bergenia, of course, is a wonderful all-rounder because in spring it has these beautiful pink flowers, white sometimes, but during the winter it has these large fleshy leaves that just persist. And of course, in the other times of year when it's not in flower, the leaves are always there, giving it its common name of elephant ears. And this plant is no trouble at all. The only work you ever need to do with it is just to cut back some of the spent leaves or spent flower spikes. And just up from the Bergenia is one of my favourite trees. And this is the cherry bark maple. And on the other side of the path we have a second of these trees. This one, however, the trunk just never got as thick as the first. Myself and my son had fun just peeling off the excess bark yesterday, but I think the tree looks the best for it. It looks much shinier now. On the other side we can see trugs from where I was working yesterday, just weeding. Erythronium looking good, and this is quite a calm side of the border because it has the early irises in it, and at this stage all we can see is the foliage. The erythroniums here look glorious, of course, and this is my biggest clump or clumps, and this one has done so well. It produces a lot of seed and seeds about, as you can see, on the ground, and just looks really super. This is a cross between two erythronium species, and I love the pink flowers. And just across from the erythronium, okay, we're going to have to go up a bit here. Okay, we have mad shadows going on here at the moment, so you'll just have to bear with me. But just up from the erythronium we have the Smilacina, which is that big green clump there, little primrose flanking it just there on the ground. And the Smilacina was featured in a separate video of mine a while ago. In fact, many of these plants have of course already been featured because I love them so much. And the Smilacina is just coming into flower, which is wonderful because the scent is amazing. And at the top of the right hand bed here we have a grass, Stipa gigantea. I think probably one of my all-time favourite grasses, if it's not Stipa tenuissima, but this was cut back recently and you can see how it has resprouted so much. And cutting it back, I find, just neatens it up a whole lot for the summer. So when we next come back here, this is going to be really big, as tall as I am, and we will have a different, just the garden in this section will look a whole lot different. So leaving behind the Smilacina, I'll just swing around here, and I guess there's a border here in front of us, but just taking a brief look over here at my summer flowering magnolia. And this is my summer flowering magnolia, which by Irish standards is grown exceedingly well. Okay, it has a lot more growth on one side than the other, but it does flower every year, enormous, giant, white, waxy flowers that are a joy to have. Now, of course, if you go to warmer countries, this is a poor shadow of a summer flowering magnolia, but I'm not in warmer countries and no one is getting to warmer countries anytime soon. So I'm just going to have to make do with my summer flowering magnolia. We'll have to come back in the summer and see those flowers. And this border here is just the back of the walkway that we walked up there. The top left behind the bush there is the Smilacina, but what we're looking at here at the front is Iberis. And this plant really is a kind of a white vision when it's in flower. I think it's coming into flower now at the moment, not fading out, so I have more to look forward to. And now just standing back a little bit further to give you a more broad view. So we're in a kind of little garden room just beyond the walkway we walked up there. But what I do want to show you is just beside the trug there. Okay, I was weeding, that's why there's a trug there. There is what looks like a tree. It's actually a bush, and it is my Daphniphyllum. And this one I really, really love. So the Daphniphyllum just seems like it has been pruned as a standard, because you've got a tall stem and then you have the canopy up above, but it just naturally went like that. So I didn't prune it. It has just decided it wants to be a tree. Now, I've seen this shrub in other people's gardens and it hasn't done that for them, so I really don't know what to say. But it's a lovely shrub. It's evergreen, so you've got the leaves all through the winter and little red stems, so really, really nice tree. And just a very brief word on this little snippet of the garden. So this is kind of like a separate garden room, flanked by beech pillars here to the right and to the left, which are just waking up now, so they look very dead at the moment, but they will be lush and green and copper in a small period of time. But this section hasn't a whole lot in it, but my family seem to love it, and they come and they put the lilacs down and they lie down there, and I think it may have something to do with the fact that this is the only place in the garden where you can get internet. Okay, so leaving behind the magnolia tree, we're now going to pass through this path here back into that section of the garden we just left, and we're going to ignore the mad shadows. Okay, at risk of making you dizzy, I'm going to try and do a complete turn in this section of the garden. So we started at the pond with the saxifrage and the Camassia, and we are turning around, and out there we have my magnolia, which was in flower earlier. Lots of tulips, lovely Acer tree, mock orange bushes, which will later on be full of fragrant flowers, a Trachycarpus palm, and glancing back to the path we came up, and then just beyond the decompression chamber. So here we have it, and the first thing I want to mention is this pink saxifrage right at the front. And this was one of the very, very first plants in the garden. Somebody dug up a bit from their own garden and put it in the boot of our car, and I planted it here, and it's gone on to spread and be wonderful. And this year I really just can't get over how amazingly long it has flowered for. I planted it around our little pond, as you can see, which is very little, with some lilies, water lilies beginning to come to the surface now. You can just make out their leaves. But the saxifrage, it's done so well. To the side of the saxifrage is Camassia, this blue bulb that you can see there on the right. and it is its moment. This is when it will shine. So its blue flowers are beginning to open up, and these are really star-shaped flowers that are so welcome because they kind of fill a gap period in the garden between when the tulips go over and when the proper perennials come into play, and it's always very, very welcome. There's lots going on in this border at the front. Heuchera, alliums, we have a Regersea popping up there, we have catmint, we have delphiniums, we have arums, lots of stuff. But one thing that is really looking good at the moment is this Darmera, and you can tell by its flowers, those pink flowers at the top of a tall spire. And right at the feet of the Darmera you can see its roots, and can you see these protuberances kind of breaking through the ground? And let's see, there's a better one over here. And I always think these look like dinosaur feet just kind of breaking up out from underneath the earth. And well, when my kids were little, that's the way they thought of it too. And just over here to the right, you can see that we have a riot of tulips. And this is Tulipa Ballerina, which I planted last autumn. Not the first time I've grown this one in the garden. So I really, really love it, and I think it looks super. Now these are from the lily flowered group, which is of course beautiful. Such a streamlined tulip that is very reminiscent of the original tulips that came from Turkey. I believe most of them were of this shape. And normally, although so beautiful, these tulips do not come back. However, if you want more information on how to choose tulips that come back, then take a look at my video of that name. And just behind the tulips here we have a Schefflera, and this is rhododendrifolia because its leaves are supposed to look like rhododendrons. And several people have asked me about this Schefflera and queried its hardiness, and I can tell you I've had this in the ground for about 5 years now. I'd have to check that out, but it has been perfectly hardy for me. Evergreen, of course. We also have snapdragons planted in among the tulips, or maybe the tulips are planted in among the snapdragons. In any case, these are ones I raised from seed and they came through the winter fine. It's a beautiful variety called Madam Butterfly that I have found hardy before, but you know, we'll talk about that more when they're actually in flower. And the Sarracenia have been cut back now, and they're just sending up buds. And this is what a Sarracenia bud looks like before it flowers. So it's a very clever plant, really. It doesn't have pitchers at the same time as it has flowers, because its pitchers eat insects, of course, but it wants the insects to pollinate its flowers, so it keeps the pitchers closed until pollination is done. And now I'm going to show you something really, really small planted down at the base of the Sarracenia planter, and I'm going to do my best to show you up close. So this is the mouse plant, and I am just, excuse wobbliness because I had to come off the tripod, and there he is, a tiny little thing known as the mouse plant, I guess because he looks like a mouse. I guess that long bit there looks like a mouse's tail, and just a really cute little aroid plant that does well in the open ground here. And here in the corner we have an Acer tree. I really did love Acer trees when I started out the garden. Couldn't grow them very well, so if one did well for me it was like whoop-de-doo. But They do get big in time, as you can see. This was such a tiny thing when I put it in first, but now it really looks quite substantial and handsome. And just panning across there, Camassia, tulips, and Astilboides coming up here underneath the tree now. And we have a load of tulips just here, which look very nice when the sun catches them. You'll have to come back a bit later on to see what comes up to replace these tulips as the season progresses. And just to the right of the tulips we have what looks like a big space. But this is actually my Melianthus major, which had to be cut right back. So it'll take a while for it to get going again. And you might be wondering what these plants are that are kind of sticking up. You might guess also from the leaves that they're aroids. And this is Dracunculus, which flowers and stays in the ground for me here. And we can expect flowers soon. And just a little bit further over we have Trachycarpus fortunei, which is the hardy palm. And not a tree, as I was reminded recently, but it has done quite well in this section of the garden. And underneath the Trachycarpus, I don't know if we can see this, but if we zoom in close, yes, we have a parrot tulip from previous years that has come back. And as we all know, parrot tulips do not regularly come back, but this one has done. And maybe just because its roots are planted in or right up against the Trachycarpus roots, and maybe just that extra drainage. And over here, a peony, because, well, you know, why not? Now, this is actually herbaceous peony, but it holds itself upright quite well. It's a Russian variety that I bought a couple of years ago, and it was touted as one that doesn't need staking. It nearly doesn't need staking. It's certainly very vigorous. And we'll come back and see those flowers soon. And behind it we have my rhododendron. And you can see that this rhododendron has flowered several times. This is the last cluster of flowers because the frost got them every single time. But it's a rhododendron that's grown for its enormous leaves rather than the flowers. It's just such a bonus when you do get them. And here we are between two mock orange bushes, which will fill out quite well as the season goes on. A couple of tulips looking good, but if you look closely down at its feet, you'll see signs of yellowish foliage. And this is some snowdrops that I moved here just a little while ago because I want to look out and I want to see these snowdrops from the house in spring. And I think this is a very good position for them.